The wind cut through the empty streets of New York like shards of glass. Snowflakes drifted down gently, but for Daniel, each one felt like a weight on his shoulders. He sat hunched on a weathered park bench, bundled in layers of old clothes that barely kept the cold out. In his hands, he clutched a creased photograph, a little girl with a missing front tooth and the brightest eyes. His daughter. He hadn't seen her in over 3 years. Just 2 winters ago, Daniel had been the head chef of a thriving Manhattan restaurant. His name was known, his food celebrated. But the pandemic swept through like a storm, shuttering businesses, drowning dreams. First the restaurant, then his savings, then his home. His marriage crumbled under the pressure. With nowhere left to go, he drifted through shelters, then onto the streets. As people rushed past, sipping coffee and checking their phones, no one noticed him. No one saw the man who once fed hundreds now struggling to feed himself. His fingers trembled, not just from the cold, but from the ache of isolation, the shame of being forgotten. He whispered to himself, "I used to have it all," more as a reminder than a lament. That morning felt like any other, a silent war between survival and surrender. But beneath the weight of despair, something still flickered inside him. It was faint. Fragile. But it was there. And in the darkest moments, even the smallest spark can mean everything. The day slowly crept forward, but the cold refused to ease. Daniel sat unmoving, his limbs stiff and numb. He was used to being ignored, people passed him like he was part of the pavement. But then, something different happened. A pair of small sneakers stopped in front of him. Daniel looked up, expecting to be asked for directions or brushed aside. Instead, a boy no older than 10 stood there, holding out a cup of hot chocolate and a half-eaten peanut butter sandwich. "My mom says we should help when we can," the boy said shyly. "I thought you might be cold." Daniel blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. His voice cracked as he tried to respond, but the words didn't come. The boy's mother stood a few feet away, watching cautiously but not interfering. Daniel hesitated, then gently took the cup with both hands. The warmth stung his frozen fingers. It had been weeks since anyone had looked at him with anything other than pity or indifference. This felt different. He managed a whisper, "Thank you." The boy smiled. "It's no big deal." But to Daniel, it was everything. As the boy rejoined his mother, Daniel took a sip of the hot chocolate. It was sweet, slightly too sugary, but it was the best thing he'd tasted in a long time. Not because of the flavor, but because of what it represented, kindness. Simple, sincere, and unexpected. For the first time in months, Daniel felt seen. And that small gesture planted something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, the wind picked up and the city lights flickered on one by one. Daniel stood at the corner of the park, clutching the empty cup the boy had given him. The warmth was gone, but the feeling remained. For reasons he couldn't explain, he found himself walking, not wandering aimlessly like before, but with purpose. A shelter sign flickered in the distance, hot meals, safe beds, open doors. He hesitated at the entrance, pride and shame battling inside him. But the memory of the boy's small act pushed him forward. Inside, the air was warm and filled with the scent of food. It reminded him of the kitchens he once commanded. Volunteers moved about, serving soup and handing out blankets. Then a familiar voice cut through the noise. "Daniel?" He turned sharply. Standing before him was Chef Morales, his old mentor from culinary school, a man who had once taught him how to perfect a sauce and balance a dish with love, not just technique. Morales looked stunned but not judgmental. "We've been looking for someone like you," he said, placing a firm hand on Daniel's shoulder. "The shelter's kitchen needs help. We're short-staffed, and I know what you're capable of." Daniel didn't know what to say. He had expected another cold night alone, but instead, he found an open door, a familiar face, and an unexpected opportunity. In the warmth of that shelter, Daniel took his first real step toward something he thought was gone forever: purpose. A week had passed, and for the first time in years, Daniel stood behind a stove, not on the street, not begging for warmth, but cooking. The shelter's kitchen bustled with life. Pots clanged, steam rose in waves, and the scent of hearty stew filled the air. Daniel's hands moved with familiar rhythm, chopping, stirring, plating, his body remembering what his heart had nearly forgotten. Each dish he prepared wasn't just food, it was a message. A message of care. Of dignity. Of hope. He made sure every bowl was full, every plate warm, every portion served with a smile. The guests in the shelter weren't just numbers, they were people, like him, who had fallen on hard times and needed to be reminded they still mattered. As he ladled soup into a bowl, he noticed a man in line, hunched and trembling from the cold, much like Daniel had been just days before. Without a word, Daniel poured a fresh cup of hot chocolate and handed it to him, just as that little boy had done for him. The man looked up, eyes wide with surprise. Daniel smiled softly and said, "You look cold." In that moment, something shifted in Daniel. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was giving. The warmth he'd once received was now flowing through him into others. Each small act, each hot meal, was proof that he was rebuilding, not just his life, but his spirit. The shelter had given him a second chance. Now, he was giving that chance to others. It was Christmas Eve. Snowflakes floated gently through the air, painting the city in a blanket of quiet white. Inside the shelter, warmth radiated from every corner, twinkling lights, the scent of cinnamon and stew, the sound of laughter and carols humming softly in the background. Daniel stood proudly at the serving table, wearing a clean apron and a smile that came easily now. The dining hall was full, but his eyes caught one familiar face at the door, Leo, the young boy who had first offered him kindness, walking in hand with his mother, both carrying bags of donated food. Daniel's heart skipped. He wiped his hands and walked over, his voice gentle. "I was hoping I'd see you again," he said. Leo beamed. "You work here now?" Daniel nodded. "Thanks to you." He knelt down, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a small, neatly wrapped box. "This is for you," he said, placing it in Leo's hands. "You gave me hope when I didn't have any. This is just a little thank you." Leo unwrapped it slowly. A simple keychain, shaped like a chef's hat, with the words, "You started it." His mother's eyes welled with tears. She whispered, "We just wanted to help." "And you did," Daniel replied. "More than you'll ever know." That night, as the shelter buzzed with joy, Daniel looked around at the faces lit by gratitude and warmth. He realized that hope doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes, it begins with a child, a cup of hot chocolate, and a single moment of kindness that changes everything. And in that shelter, under the hum of Christmas lights, hope lived, and it was shining brighter than ever.